Okay, Shovavim, let's get started. So, there's been some times in the past where I've started from the beginning and haven't necessarily gotten to the end. So this year I'm starting from the end. We're starting with chatzitzas, which is a very, very negeya sugya. It's also, there's some geshmak alumdus in the beginning, and the examples are very negeya, very lamaisa. It's good to be your own paisik at home, as far as you could, and therefore it's geshmak, let's do it. Okay, so, a woman, when it gets to the time that she has to be tevila, tevila is obviously going to transfer her from a status of tumah to a status of tahara. The halacha is, as we all know, that you have to be tevil. She has to be tevil her entire body in the mikvah for the tevila to count. Now, if there is a chatzitza on her body, then that chatzitza messes up the tevila, and the tevila does not count. What is a chatzitza? So midaraisa, it's very difficult to get a chatzitza midaraisa. A chatzitza midaraisa is something that covers roiv of your body, and she is makpid about it. She doesn't want it there. Imagine, rolling around in the mud. It's not your normal shayla, and then the lady is ready to be tevil in the mikvah like that. It just doesn't really happen. There are some instances where you have it with like medical issues and maybe severe burns in the body or some, extreme cases. But in our normal world, we don't have much of the rubai umakpid. Midrabanan, they asered rubai she'inei makpid. Let's say there's something which is also not very common, something that's covering most of the woman's body, but she's fine with it, she's cool with it, she's not makpid, it's not a problem. That would be a chatzitza midrabanan, where geyser rubai she'ina makpid atu rubai shemakpid. So therefore, that would be a chatzitza midrabanan. Now, where the majority of this shiur and discussion and sugya is dealing with is the situation of miyat umakpid. Miyat umakpid is when you have a small, something doesn't have to be small, but it's covering less than most of your body, but you don't want it there. You're makpid. It's a problem. You don't like it there. Your pieces of dirt and etc. that we're going to be discussing are generally things that women do not want on their body, and that would be asr midrabanan. And the reason is because if we allowed miyat umakpid, you'll come to allow rubai umakpid, even though it sounds a little crazy for us to even get to a case of rubai umakpid. So the rabbanim were geyser miyat umakpid. Okay, now when we were discussing rubai she'inei makpid, there's one game changer din which is brought in the Shulchan Aruch that says we don't just view it as roiv of the entire body, we even view it as roiv of the hair on the body. Right? We view the head, and as the Sidrei Tahara explains, the Chacham Tzadim goes like this as well, we view each independent hair spot of the body as its own individual cheshbon. So if, let's say, a woman has a chatzitza on roiv of the hair of her head, that would be called a chatzitza. Whether if it was makpid, it would be a chatzitza deraisa. If it was ein makpid, it would be a chatzitza derabanan. So this is already something which is, we're going to discuss some examples where there is some potential to run into these issues. They're not so common, but there are some examples to run into. And based on the Sidrei Tahara, which is the way that we paskin, the way that we paskin, they discuss there's 4 areas of the woman's body which are considered densely hairy, and that would be that place would have its own cheshbon, namely the head, the armpits, and oisamakam. Now, some hair on the legs, which is generally spread out, that is not an issue, or as the Shulchan Aruch points out, discussing for a man, which might be negay of gerus, Amir Shem, the Beis Midrash should get rebuilt very soon, and we have to go up to the Beis Midrash, then a man potentially could have an issue of hair in the chest or hair in the beard. Hopefully our women do not have these issues. So, therefore, for a woman, we only have 4 places of issue. Now, obviously, if a woman, she, shaves, waxes, lasers, whatever it is, any of those areas, so in those areas, she obviously does not have this issue. Okay. So once again, from what I've explained so far, it comes out that miyat she'enoi makpid, a small thing that doesn't really bother me, is not a chatzitzah. Nevertheless, the Ramah says that the din lechatchila is, the minhag of Klal Yisrael, the din lechatchila is a woman gets rid of everything. Even the miyat she'enoi makpid, the small things that do not bother her, she lichatchila gets rid of that before tevila. If after tevila she comes home and she notices a miyat she'enoi makpid, it's fine. We're not b'diavad, we're okay with it. But the Ramah says lichatchila, we get rid of it. I think, to my understanding, the Svardim go with this Ramah. I know the Sidrei Tahara wants to prove that the Shulchan Aruch actually holds of this, even though from somewhere else, the case of a ring, which we'll discuss later, which is the Raya of Sidrei Tahara, is difficult to understand how he explains that the Shulchan Aruch holds of it. But either way, to my understanding, I believe it is the minhag of the Sfardim as well, that they also get rid of even the miyat she'enoi makpid. But I am sure if you run into different shaylas and different questions, I imagine the Sephardi poskim will be more mekel, because l'maisa, this is a din in the Ramah. Now, one thing that's interesting, which is certainly negeya, is if you find a miyat she'enoi makpid, I'm going to get into examples soon, but if you find a miyat she'enoi makpid, a small thing that we're going to say is not a chatzitza, people don't really care about that little speck of dust on your back. You don't really care, right? So, what if there's something that you find on Shabbos? And this miyat she'enoi makpid is the type of miyat she'enoi makpid, to get rid of it, you have to do a malacha. Or you have to, use something muksa. You'll need to use a muksa something, or, you have to use a sponge. The only sponge that you have to get rid of it is the type of sponge that you can't use on Shabbos, and you have to scrape, whatever the exact example is. There's plenty of examples to talk about, but you'll need a tweezer to get this out in a way that you're going to take it, whatever it may be. You'll have to take out hairs with it, and whatever it is, that it's the case of a miyat she'enoi makpid that you cannot deal with on Shabbos. So the Chut Shani says that you're toivel with that miyat she'enoi makpid, meaning that's already b'diavad. The term b'diavad usually has 2 potential meanings. It could mean post facto, which is the standard meaning, but it could also sometimes mean when the lechatchila is not viable. So the Chut Shani says over here, when even pre-facto, if that's a word, you could rely on being toivel with the miyat she'enoi makpid if there's no heichi timsa to get rid of the miyat she'enoi makpid. Okay. And obviously, if also, sometimes you have something, during the week you can't get rid of it for whatever reason. If during the week you can't get rid of the miyat she'enoi makpid, once again, you'd be able to toivel with that. But I think the Shabbos scenario is relatively more common, I believe. Okay, now, what about an item which she usually isn't makpid about, but sometimes is makpid about? And how about right now she's not makpid about it? I'll give you an example to make this clear in a second. So we paskin that is considered makpid. Another thing, actually, I'll give this example. I really skipped one point that I wanted to say beforehand, but I'll explain in a second. Example that's brought in the Paiskim, it's brought by the Rush and the Rajba, I believe. The Rishonim already bring this down, is a ring. Now, a ring is meat, correct? And a ring is ain't makpid. Because if you think about it, If you think about it, women like having rings on. They like it. It looks nice. So it's miyat she'ena makpid. So you should say, no problem. You should be allowed to be toivel with a ring, even a tight-fitting one. However, since the minhag of women is to take off their rings when they need dough, or some of them showering, they take off their rings. Therefore, since it's it's considered hakpada. Some of the time, memela, we treat it as a hakpada all the time, and we can consider a ring as a davar hachotzitz. So a ring would be considered a chatzitza. Now, once we actually got to this example, I want to just take a second to open the lumdus for a second, because you're probably wondering, wait a second, like how can you be toivel with a ring? Like the water, if it's a tight ring, the water's not going to get to the finger. Like, let's say there's no such thing as kneading dough, and everybody wore it to knead dough and shower, and this point wasn't true. So I would be saying you'd be able to be toivel with a ring. I'm not saying it would fit into the lechatchila, the Ramah. I'm saying l'maisa mekardin, you'd be able to do it. But does it bother you? Wait, the water's not getting there. You need tevila. So what's the lumdus of why it would work? It would work if it wasn't for this issue of kneading dough. So the basic explanation is that something that's small and you're not makpid about is batal. And since it's batal to the guf, then mainly you were toivel the whole guf. There's another pshat in the Chazon Ish, which is much more difficult to understand. And he says, no, really, it's not batal to the guf. So how does the tevila work? The way that the tevila works is, since the mikvah is covering roiv of your body, it's rubai kikuloi. Now the obvious kasha on the Chazon Ish, which he asked on himself, is you stick a finger out of the mikvah, everybody knows the tefillah is not valid, and we don't say rubai kikulei. So he has a lumta shechilak between when you're in gansen in the mikvah, but there's something over you, versus when you stick a finger out and that finger is out of the mikvah. Now, whatever, we'll leave that for the Chazon Ish. It's not the pashtus, but it's a good lumdish discussion.
Like you can't get Rubik Kulin for minion, but you can get Rubik Kulin this paladin if you have 10 people in a room.
That's very good. That's l'chara. Ruvain's right. L'chara, it's the same lumdus in terms of tefillah. Yeah, l'chara, that would be a raya for the Chazon Ish is explaining. Very good. I like it. Gishmak. Okay, so one more point that I missed. I want to point out that if there's something that normal women, right over the women, are makpid about, and this woman, she's the type of woman, I guess maybe she's a little slobbish, or maybe she's a little chilled, however exactly you want to present it, and most women do not like their hand covered with mud. That's what most women don't like. This woman happens to be just fine. Dried mud all over her hand. It does not bother her. She's chilled. It does not bother her. There's much more minute examples, but this is, I want to get extreme to show the point. We say for her, that's considered akbada. Even for her, she mamish doesn't mind. She's not lip service. She really doesn't mind. It doesn't make a difference. Since for Raiv of the women, it is akbada, for her it is also a akbada. There is one exception to this. The exception is if she's in a different class, in a different category. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that normal people have a little grease on their hands they're makpid. If I have a little grease on my hands, I'm going to go wash it off. But the guys who work in the mechanics, or even the guys that work in the bike stores, they walk around all day with this black grease on their hands. It's not considered for them a hakpada. So if she works at a bike shop, or she's a mechanic, and she has a little of this grease in her hands, it would not be considered an hakpada, and therefore she would be allowed to be tevila with it. Now, Chut Shani Rav Nissen Krelitz has a little issue with this, because he claims she's probably still going to take it off to go to a wedding, so maybe it shouldn't count, but Lamaisa, it would work. Now, I gave a fun example at first: a car mechanic and somebody that works at the bike shop. But maybe a little bit more negaya example is a ganenet. Maybe a ganenet. I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it so much, but I'm guessing ganenets who are dealing with all these like gluey stuff and sparkly stuff. Maybe there's a higher level of acceptance of this stuff on their fingers than general society. I don't know if that's true. I didn't run a survey, but that might be true. I don't know. Anybody here? Anybody's wife is a ganenet? No. We have no. I don't know if that's true. I wonder if it is true. That might be an application where you could say it. Now, the question is, how far does the categorization go? Like there was a shita who was, what was it, the Tiferes L'Moshe. I don't know exactly who that is, the Tiferes L'Moshe. But the Tiferes L'Moshe says that therefore all medical issues shouldn't be an issue like bandages and casts and all that type of stuff. Because all the women with broken arms don't mind having casts. And all the women with whatever cuts don't mind bandages. And therefore it shouldn't be akpada. The Sidrei Tahara rejects this, and the Poskim reject that. Because that's not a category of people. You're not, we are the broken arm society. You're not a broken arm society. You might be, but there is something, I'm a ganenet. And you could see you're part of the group of people that are ganenets. That would be a reasonable claim. But there are going to be some gray areas of uncertainty as to whether you could classify people as a group. Like there is a tzad which is not really accepted. It's maybe used as a sniff of a woman. She is a non-challah baking woman. And memela the ring shouldn't be a chatzitza. We don't use that we don't really accept it, but that possibility is used as a sniff later sometimes.
This is only to turn an immediate chain of Makpid
to a non-Makpid. It's turning a immediate chain of Makpid into a non-Makpid. Medium is turning a medium Makpid to a miyat she'ena Makpid. Sorry, I said that wrong.
Fine.
Turning a miyat Makpid to a miyat she'ena Makpid. Turning a chatzitza derabban into a non-chatzitza.
Fine. So like small casts, they just build hands glue. If it was something that was covering the rove in some way, then obviously
rove would be more difficult. But rove would be more difficult to apply such a heter, definitely. Actually, it would be impossible. Okay, so fine. Now, if it's something that she doesn't, right? I said she doesn't mind that most people. If it's something that she minds, but most people don't mind, she's a mefunik. She minds a little old dot on her leg. Most people don't care about this little stupid dot on her leg. She cares. Has OCD. I don't want to forget before I start with OCD. She's a very clean person, way above average, real mefunekas actually. So for her, it is a chatzitza. I did see that in the shiur Shevet Levi, Rav Vosner, that he says, however, if the woman has some mental condition, she's not, I'm not sure whether he was referring to OCD or he was referring to somebody that is not 100%, so to speak. I'm not sure what exactly he was alluding to. But then, even if it bothers her, but nobody else it bothers, that is not considered hakbada. It would be more of like batal daite, it's a kodem.
So we say batal daite lechumra, but not lekula.
Not lekula, correct. Except in this extreme example of the woman with the mental condition. Fine. If she can't remove it, or it's difficult, painful to remove it, I'm referring to the thing that is most people are not makpid about. If it's the type of thing that I said it the wrong way. I mean, new point. If it's the type of thing that she's not makpid about, and most people are not makpid about, but some people are makpid about. So it fits into our din l'chatchila to get rid of. But if it's painful or hard to get rid of, and it's the type of thing that she's not makpid, and most people are not makpid, then she does not have to get rid of it. Now, next halacha: if water flows freely under this chatzitza, potential chatzitza, it is not considered a chatzitza. Now, something that needs to be there for a life-threatening issue, generally some medical something or another, that needs to be there for a life-threatening issue, so that's not called makpid. Which, by the way, this is a big chiddush what I'm saying. Generally, if you need something there, it's generally not enough to say it's not makpid, because it's something that people don't want. People don't like. People don't want tubes coming out of their body. So there generally would be hakbada. But if it's a life-threatening thing, then it's considered einay makpid. Now you might ask, well, what's the kasha? It's pekuach nefesh. It's not pekuach nefesh that she's tevelas. It's pekuach nefesh that she has the item there. So that pekuach nefesh doesn't help you being tevil. But it does help to say that it's a einay makpid. We consider it as a einay makpid. Now something that's painful to remove, so it's actually a machlokes rishonim, whether it's considered to be a chatzitza. L'maisa, we pass consider tahara, the chavas Rikiva Eger, and l'maisa, if it's something that's natural to the body, then we are mekel. And if it's something that's not natural, it's external to the body, we are machmer. That's something that's painful to remove. Now, something that will be on our body for a long period of time, do we consider that part of our body, batul to our body, or do we consider that to be a chatzitza? So it depends how long it's going to be connected to our body. But there's the Chalkas Yosef, which is a big heter of 7 days. As long as it can be connected to our body for 7 days, it's already
medical equipment.
Usually, that's the most common application. The most common application is medical equipment or something that got attached by accident, maybe. Some shard of something went into her skin, and they're not going to be able to remove it for 2 months. So stitches. So the most mekel opinion is the Chalkas Yosef, who says 7 days. Rabbi Kiva Eger says, the Avnei Nezer says 6 months. There's some places who say 3 months. A lot of places who say 1 month. And we'll see when we get to a little more practical. Now, starting from when does the count start? So according to Rabbi Yosef, it's from the time of tevila, how much longer it's going to be there. Shlomo Zalman measures from the time that it got attached to our body, how much longer it's going to be there. So it's a chomer of Rabbi Yosef, or I should say kula of Shlomo Zalman, depending on when's the starting time, when does the clock start, to decide whether it's batal to her. Now, something which is internal to the body, it's what's the word? Blua. It's inside the body. So that is not considered a chatzitza. There's 3 different categories, maybe I'll just jump into right now, of the body. There's the surface of the body. Things on the surface of the body are a chatzitza. Then there's things called the beis hastarm, which are, let's say, could be closed. They're not very open. They're not very open, but they're not completely internal to the body. Those are the mouth. Those are the surface area of the inside of the nostrils. The surface area of inside the ears. Igros Mesh says as far as your finger goes. They are oisamakoim, but not too far deep. And there's some other ones that might surprise you, like in between the toes. Some place can say have it in a beis hastarm, because not all toes were created equal. I didn't do a toe survey, but some people, when the toes are squeezed together, inside it's not such a apparent to the surface area. Some people are thinking what, and some people are thinking obviously. Yeah, look at your own toes. I don't know. Well, maybe women's toes maybe are generally smaller. Maybe I don't know. That could also be a cheshbon. Okay, so those are basis starm. The halacha is water does not need to touch the insides of the basis starm. You do not need to open your mouth when you're being tevel. She doesn't need to be open her mouth when she's being tevelas. However, it has to be royal libias mayim. So any kosher royal libias mayim be a mayim and a makebas. So therefore, your mouth has to be completely cleared, and all these other areas have to be completely cleared. The next category is called belua. That's something that's mamish in the body. That's deeper up your nose, deeper in your ears. I guess deeper down your throat. And that would be further up, oisamakam, etc. These places of the body are inside the body, and chatzitza in those places is not a issue. And we're going to see examples where these all come clear. Now, something that is there for noi, for beauty, is not a chatzitza, which is a very important thing, because it's b'chal einam, it's einam makpedes. It's there for beauty. So when we say that on roiv of the body, maybe not as quickly, but certainly on a miyad, if it's there for noi, it's not a chatzitza.
Can you get rid of nail polish?
So all right, I'll jump to nail polish. Wasn't first on my list, but let's do it. Nail polish is a very interesting thing. You know, l'maisa, women are noi to get rid of everything, and they get rid of their nail polish. Should nail polish be a chatzitza? So nail polish is there for noi. It's definitely there for beauty. It's miyat she'ena makpedes, because you're not makpid. It's there for noi. L'chayra, it should be perfectly fine as long as it's not chipped and cracked. If it's chipped or cracked, then she's makpedes, and then it's a real problem. But l'maisa, the minhag of you get rid of everything. However, if a woman doesn't want to get rid of her nail polish, which, by the way, it happens in the mikvah in Nachlod over here, where there's the mikvah services, a lot of women that are not so frum. You know, a lot of women come in with pants and uncovered hair to go to the mikvah over here. They're not makpid to tell women to take off their nail polish, because the ma'isa, halacha, it's really fine. It's not what we do. And we get rid of everything. But as long as it is a good job, it's fine. If it's not a good job, then she has to either get rid of the rest or re-polish the rest, because it has to be good. Because once it's not good, there's problems. But if it's good, it should be fine. Okay, so further in the examples. So
why are we going to get rid of it?
Why are we noig? Because it's a good question. There's two reasons. The first reason is because there's a risk of it being chipped and cracked and whatever, and that's a real problem. So to not get involved in that risk. The second reason is because we just make a loy plug, which is the best way of having our women get rid of all chatzitzas, is just get rid of everything. By making that loy plug, we solve as many problems as we could. Now, pus. If there's pus in a wound, it's not a chatzitza. Or if the pus oozes outside of the wound, so during the first 3 days, it's not considered a chatzitza. After 3 days of the initial part of the womb, it's considered a chatzitza if it is dried. Scabs. So it's actually, scabs is machlokes rishonim, when you have to get rid of scabs. The ma'isa la'alacha, we paskin that you do not have to get rid of scabs. The minhag is that small scabs that are pretty much healed and aren't painful to get rid of, we get rid of. Scabs that aren't completely healed and therefore usually painful to get rid of, we have the woman soften it up and put it in, let's soak in water and soften up, and so the water really gets everywhere, and not to remove it. What about little pieces of skin on the fingers, like cuticles, but cuticles that are like a little bit off and whatever. So the ma'isa, the halacha is we pass them that they're not a chatzitza, but women should get rid of it. It's the same type of thing. Maker adin the psak is we don't view them as chatzitza, but women should get rid of them. What about peeling skin? Let's say a sunburn or a wart or something. So basically don't bother peeling it because you'll never get it all off, and it's just not going to work. the best thing is to soak it and rub it gently and get rid of as much as you could. And whatever you can't get rid of, that's already going to be considered Eina Makpidis. What about shaving legs? So it's a good thing for women to shave legs day 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it is before the tevila. It's a positive action. The Maisa, Maker Adin, if a woman does not shave her legs before wax or laser or whatever else she does, then it is okay. We do not view it as a chatzitza. There is a shayla that comes up when a woman establishes for herself a minhag that she always waxes or shaves the day before the mikvah, and now she made it into her minhag. It's really a shayla. Lamaisa will be mekel, but it's much better not to get into the shayla and not have a clear minhag of always doing it the day before.
Why are we mekel?
Why are we mekel? Because it's not. There's. You know what? Let me to do this. I'm jump to right now. By nails, I'm going to contrast that. What about the fingernails? Do you have to cut your fingernails before going to the mikvah? So the halacha is. You would say it's part of the body, it's a natural part of the body. It shouldn't be an issue. Why should you have to cut your fingernails before going to the mikvah? However, it's become minhag Yisrael to cut your fingernails before going to the mikvah. So therefore, since it's become minhag Yisrael to cut your fingernails before going to the mikvah, so therefore, as the Shach says, it brings the Bach, that since it's minhag Yisrael, it's oimed ligzois, kol ha-oimed ligzois kegoizes dami, and therefore we view the fingernail shearings as if they're cut. And they're cut, but they're smashed now against your fingers because they're actually attached. And therefore it's a chatzitza because it's blocking the top part of your fingers. I know, what a chiddush, huh? That was a couple of stages of chiddush. Minhag Yisrael to cut your fingers. Therefore it's oimed ligzois, so it's cut, but it's not letting any water in between the finger shearings and the fingers. And Memela, it's considered a chatzitza. There's a achiezer that's mekel in certain scenarios of like not such strong women that were never makabel the minhag Yisrael, but that's very, very not pashut. So one might argue. So really. If a woman's legs aren't shaved, there's no chatzitza there. The hair that grows out of the legs, that's part of the body. So it's not really a chatzitza. One could argue that if it's her minhag to do it, therefore we'll apply the same principle of kol oimed to cut, is like the hair is already cut. And if we view that here it's already cut, but it's still attached to the leg, it's going to be a chatzitza problem. And the meisa, Soif kol soif, we're mekel, and we'll be mekel. But not everybody's mekel. So therefore, better not to get yourself into that issue, and this time you do it the day before, next time 2 days before, next time 3 days before, but not every time to do it the day before. I think we'll stop over here. We have more to do next week, and shkoyach for coming, and we'll take from here next week.